Hello everybody, Margaret C. Williams here. I encourage you all to stick through this whole video because it may be extremely thought-provoking and it'll definitely be conversation-provoking. So, as of late, you've seen a lot of things about Roe versus Wade and abortion in the news. It's everywhere right now because of the leaked Supreme Court documents that say that they may overturn the Roe versus Wade decision because it's unconstitutional. Okay? Now, this is something that I think we really need to have a discussion about, okay? It's very important, especially in this day where everything that's all over the place is equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? So this is the big thing that, and it's funny because if you arrange those letters, it spells die, right? Sometimes it's just in the arrangement of the letters. But let me continue. So it's very important that we have really constructive conversations and a holistic situational approach to this type of conversation. So I'm going to talk about some of the aspects which are not talked about, not considered in relation to this whole abortion situation, because I think it's very important and I need people to actually think, because thinking is important. And even though we have different personal feelings and different personal beliefs, it's the thinking and the thought process that's very, very important. And there are many aspects of the conversation which are not being discussed. It's being boiled down to a simple, you're either for abortion or you're not for abortion. And I don't think that either side is really considering all of the factors that go into the whole situation. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Now, let's start with a bit of background about the case. So, Jane Roe, that was a pseudonym for the person. Her name was actually Norma McCorvey, okay? Norma Lee Nelson McCorvey is her name, McCorvey. So, the child that she was carrying at the time of Roe versus Wade, which was the center of the whole case, actually was born. It was carried to term and born. So she had the baby. Now, here's an interesting fun fact. She had 2 other babies before that. Now we're going to go back. Let me say that again. The baby during the case Roe versus Wade was born. She had that child. She had 2 children before that previously, and she gave all 3 children up for adoption. It's true. You can look it up if you don't believe me. But don't believe me because I'm telling you. But don't believe me because I'm saying it. Believe it because I'm telling you. Okay? It's very important that we have these type of conversations. This stuff is very important. So, let's step out of that part for a second. And let me tell you a little bit about me. So, I'm black. I'm a northerner. Okay? I'm from the East Coast. Okay? So, given my age demographic, I'm pretty much assured to be a Democrat. The majority of my family is Democrats that live in this part of the country. So that's my background. I went to city schools. When I went to city schools, we were taught about President Nixon. They told us President Nixon basically, bad man, not good, right? I mean, I think a lot of you guys listening now might still think Nixon, bad man, not good. They told us Nixon, racist. They told us Nixon was a racist. I mean, you know, this is what I grew up, I heard, and I was taught, you know. So I was like, well, I guess that's probably what the thing is. So I kind of carried that thought process around with me for years about Nixon until, and honestly, I didn't really care, you know, because who really thinks about old presidents? Who's out here talking about Gerald Ford right now? I didn't, but you get the idea. Anyway, so for years I carried that thought process about Nixon with me. And one day, CNN, yes, CNN of all places, right? They did a special on the Nixon tapes where they played the Nixon tapes in their entirety, okay? They don't always do a lot of right stuff, but in this case, I think that was very, very good. So I got to hear Nixon in his own words. And what I realized from listening to the Nixon tapes is Nixon wasn't racist at all. He was just an old white dude from back in the 50s. That's it. You know, so it was different time back then. It wasn't like today. We can't say, oh, these are our values. These are the way we talk now. And we place it on a whole different cultural era, excuse me. So yeah, no, he wasn't racist. He was just a old white dude from old white times. Very white times, right? So he said some stuff on those tapes that really, really stuck with me. Okay? He said one thing in particular. He said, and I'm going to do my best to paraphrase it. He basically said, I have great affinity for black people, but they're not going to make it another 500 years or 400 years, you know. He said they're not going to make it another 400 years, that we have to get them off of social services. Otherwise, they're not even going to exist in 400 more years. So, since that time, it's been less than 50 years. And black people are almost completely extinct in this nation. Oh, Marcus, but there are so many black people. But are there, or is there just a high concentration of black people where you live? But are there so many black people all across the nation? Did you know that we only make up about 12% of the population? People say it's 13, but it's not. It's like 12.2 or 12.3, something right there, percent of the population. Now, very, very, very important thing to talk about is the fact that in the black society, that's black people as a whole that are American, we have a declining birth rate. We have roughly one child per couple, okay? Now, that means that our birth rate is continuing to diminish, okay? We've been told lately that the black wealth is so low that it's projected by 2030, black wealth will be absolutely zero, okay? So keep that in consideration also. So let's go back to the black birth rate. You're like, oh, well, Marcus, that's not a little bit. If every couple is having about one kid, that's a lot. Okay, boom. So let's say we have two couples, right? Each couple has one child, right? So each couple has one child. So two couples, one child. Okay? Look at that. 2, 1. So from 2, we went down to 1. That's a very, very, very interesting thing that just happened there. We had 4 people all together. Then we ended up with 2 people. So if then these 2 people have a child, okay, we end up with 1 child. We end up with 1 person. We started with 4 people. We went down to 2 people. They came together and then there was 1 person. I think that this is very, very important. They try to say, oh, well, black people have all the kids, and we don't have all the kids. We need to have more children. This is a fact, okay? We're being killed at an extremely crazy rate just in daily life. You see a murder on the TV, can almost guarantee you 9 times out of 10 it's going to be a black person that was killed. Okay, which is a whole separate conversation for another video. We're not going to go into that right now. So it's important that we look at this for what's really going on. If for 4 people that are black, they only have 2 kids, and those 2 kids have 1 child, we went from 4 to 1 in 2 generations. So if we're already on a declining trend as far as population and birth rates, this is important because they're 2 different statistics. So we're being outbred and we're underbreeding. So that's very important. Okay, very, very important. Okay, then you got, that's a whole nother video. But anyway, we're also being killed off at a large number by, well, you know it, violence. Then we also have the issue of poverty and quality of health affecting life expectancy, okay? We have all of these other issues that is presenting itself in our ability to breed, okay? This is important, and I'm saying it, and a lot of people don't think about it like, oh, well, you're talking about breeding like people are stock and stuff like that. I'm talking about breeding like it means a dependence on the sustainability of my race, okay? I want there to be able to be black people in space, okay? It's good to be black on the moon. Facts, okay? So it's very important that black people are able to continue to propagate, okay? You know what they say in the Bible? The Lord said, be fruitful and multiply. Well, we are not being fruitful, or are we multiplying at the numbers that we need to sustain our race, and it's very, very bad. Now, let's take that and let's jump into Margaret Singer. Okay, Margaret Singer, the founder of Planned Parenthood, was a known racist. You can look this up, like you're not able to make this stuff up. Okay, she said that she wanted to get rid of all of the black people. Okay, she wanted to eradicate the black race from existence, not only in America, but on the planet, but especially in America. Okay, this is the person who founded Planned Parenthood. This is the person who founded this organization that so many people right now are fighting for them to be able to kill black babies. Okay? Now, this isn't me taking a personal stance on anything. These are just facts. I am stating facts. I'm not making a personal inference or anything. Please do not take it as that. Okay? I'm legitimately keeping my personal feelings and thoughts out of this. That's a separate thing completely, because I think, again, this is needed for conversation. Okay? So the woman who said that she wants to eliminate the black race founded Planned Parenthood to kill black babies. This was her whole intention. Now you're going to say, oh, well, Marcus, that's not necessarily true. Okay, let's hit you with some facts, okay? 84% of all Planned Parenthood centers that perform abortions are within 2 miles of a heavily saturated black or Hispanic community. 79% are within a heavily saturated black community. Okay, these are real freaking numbers, right? So since the start of this, okay, matter of fact, I'm gonna jump back 1 second. We're gonna jump back 1 second. Boop. Okay, let's go back. You guys remember slavery? Yeah, slavery. You guys remember the Civil War? Yeah, Civil War. Okay. So after slavery, Civil War, freeing of the slaves, all that good jazz, before the Reconstruction. Okay. Also, if you're not familiar with what happened during the Reconstruction, I very, very, very much encourage you to go get some books from the library, watch some stuff on YouTube about the Reconstruction in America. Because during the Reconstruction, right before the Reconstruction, we had the most black senators and people in the House of Representatives, more so than we have right now. Okay? And then they instituted Jim Crow laws and stuff like that to hold us back. Who did that? That was the Democrats. We're not talking bad about any specific policies or parties today as far as that relates, but that's who passed those policies. Let's get back at it. Boom. So at that point, right there, right after the freedom of the slaves made up for 38%. 38% of the whole population of the South. I'm going to say that again because I think you need to understand and swirl that around in your head. After the Civil War, slaves made up 38% of the total population. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I said that wrong. Excuse me. After the Civil War, free men, oh yeah, that sounds much better. Free men made up 38% of the Southern population. That's right. New freed men. That's amazing. Okay. Oh, but what about freed women, Marcus? You gotta be politically correct. Anyway, freed men. Okay? So, we understand that 38% is not a small percentage. Okay? In some towns and in some counties, South Carolina is a good example. They had almost, I think South Carolina had almost 70% of their population was was black, okay, at that time, or something like that. It's 70-ish percent, okay? I don't remember the number off the top of my head. But they even had some counties there where it was as high as 89%. These are real things. You can go look them up. So how did our percentages drop from such high numbers to such low percentages now, where we're only about 12% of the population of the nation? So it goes to laws, it goes to murder and atrocities that were committed against black people. Remember, we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion and stuff like that, right? So these are important things. Anyway, so with that being said, our population dropped dramatically over years, and it came down to policies that were being harshly impacting our people. Like I said, atrocities, then you have the Jim Crow laws, then you have redlining, you have, and I say atrocities, you're like, well, what atrocities? When they used to go out and completely kill whole towns of black people? Yeah, this was a thing. This really was a thing. So, we're not going to talk about it though, but we'll keep going forward. So, we had issues, and this is where it gets like systematic, right? People say systematic all the time, and usually when I hear systematic, it just immediately just grinds my gears because it tells me that somebody's about to say some stuff that they really are misrepresenting. But in this case, it was really a systematic policy of eradication of black people, slowly yet surely, okay, that our government had implemented on all levels for different ways, for different means, okay? So, along comes Margaret Singer. I want to get rid of all the black people. Let's put abortion clinics in their community to kill all the black babies, okay? Now, you're like, well, Marcus, that's a little harsh. Well, no, it's not. It goes to, I just built up the backstory to what was going on at the time and to show you exactly where this frame of thought came from, right? Right now they're telling you all white people are racist because of their ancestors, right? Now, I don't believe that, but I'm talking about the people who were white and who were legitimately racist that are today being defended by the people who talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Doesn't make sense to me. But anyway, let's get back at it. So, with Margaret Singer and her pushing for Planned Parenthood, at that time, we had larger families. We also had more communal ties. So, basically, the community more looked out for themselves and families stayed more together and things like that, okay? You didn't really see an explosion in single-parent family homes in the black community until the 80s, which that really started after Lyndon B. Johnson, because Lyndon B. Johnson was a president that took over for JFK. He was a vice president, but he was also a politician from Texas. He was very notably extremely racist. And I did some studying on him. I've wrote a couple of reports on Lyndon B. Johnson. That dude was a master statesman. I mean, this dude, as far as being a politician, was awesome. But he was freaking crazy racist, okay? Did not like black people. So he put in policies of expanding welfare and stuff like that so that the black people will become more dependent on the government. At that time, when he was president, he also expanded things like CPS, so separating black families. So this is a really big, important, holistic picture. I told you, I'm bringing this thing full circle so you get a much wider picture, and don't stop watching the video now. We got more to go, okay? I'm going to tie this all up with a very pretty bow, okay? So that was very impactful on the black community and also affected our birth rate. But also, at that point in that time, they started pushing a narrative to black people, which we still see predominantly in black communities. It's not even in Hispanic communities like that, where it's, I can do it myself. I don't need no man. It's expensive to live by yourself right now. That's why a lot of people are going back to renting rooms right now. How do you think it's going to be easy or it's going to be simple to raise a child by yourself when it takes two people to make a child, and we have a serious lack of community and support as far as familial support goes right now? It's just unrealistic completely. But anyway, that whole narrative and notion was pushed by Lyndon B. Johnson's administration through CPS, through welfare and stuff like that. They didn't want to have any men in the house. And anybody that worked in CPS will tell you that they used to have this policy where if they saw any men's shoes in the house, they would take you off of social services. This is a real thing. These are real policies. So when these people, okay, that talk about social equity and all of this nonsense and jibber jabber, okay, are out here championing these people, okay, and their policies and their programs and their companies that they've created, you really need to reconsider, okay? Because the origins of them and the impact to them are still impacting black people extremely severely in a negative way till this day. Okay? Let's keep going, okay? Back to Margaret Singer. Okay. Matter of fact, let's step a bit back from her, right? We're going back to the Reconstruction, okay? So like I said, we had a ton of people in the Senate and in the House of Representatives in the United States, more so as far as black people than we do right now, okay? So it's very, 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 very different than it is now. What happened? Well, the Reconstruction happened. The Democrats put in Jim Crow era laws and redlining and all of these things to prevent black people from being able to participate very well in government, okay? And then basically tried to limit their ability to be able to rise to the level of more affluent white people. And they kicked them all out of Congress. So this is some more BS, right? So, and who did this? This was the Democrats. Again, I'm not slighting the Democrats. This is freaking history. Go read a book. Oh, well, Marcus, the party's changed. Not really, except the Democrats really got way further left than they've ever been, okay? At some point, they had morals and values, and now they're being basically run awry by an extreme leftist cult that doesn't represent the greater whole of Democrats, and the majority of the Democrats that are part of the party are not willing to speak up publicly against them. That's a big issue, okay? That's a very big issue. But I'm not swinging a sledgehammer at the Democrats. I'm just pointing out factual things. So please don't get mad at me if you identify as a Democrat, because I love you anyway, okay? You are special and important to me. Okay, every individual is, all right, whether you're independent, Republican, conservative, Green Party, whatever. I love you all. You all are awesome, and you guys have a lot of great ideas and stuff that you can add to society, okay? But as far as the party goes, there's serious issues. There are serious issues. Now, going forward, we just talked about the Reconstruction and what happened there. And we talked about some of the issues afterward with what happened after JFK. Remember that Nixon quote that I put out, that we have to get black people off of social services or they won't be here in 400 years? So that's crazy, because less than 40 years, 50 years later, he's almost right. Black people are almost extinct in America. And we're fast approaching extinction. Okay, we are in an extinction level event. Okay, we need to be having more children. So, it's bad. It's really, 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 really bad, you guys. Let's hit up Margaret Singer. Okay. So, Margaret Singer and Planned Parenthood. So, since the inception of Planned Parenthood, they have, you figure out the way you want to call it, I'm going to say that they killed tens of millions of black babies. That's what they did. They killed them. Okay, they were alive and then they're dead. Well, when does life start, Marcus? Oh, it's still in the womb. That's not be politically correct. First of all, backstory on me. I was a preemie, okay? I was born extremely early, okay? So that's a little bit backstory on me. I also had to deal with the foster care system and adoption and all of these other things that I've also mentioned earlier, so this is a very big thing to me. So I'm going to say that they killed these babies because the babies were alive and they killed them, and that's what happened. Tens of millions of babies. They killed more black babies than we have black people alive right now. Marcus, you're being so callous about the whole thing, and it's abortion is good and stuff like that. I haven't said whether abortion is good or bad yet. I want to be very clear on that. Now watch this, because this next part is the coup de grace. So, tens of millions, and it depends on how you count. I think it's, and please somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's about 55 million, okay, abortions since Planned Parenthood has begun, okay? So yeah, it's about 55 million, probably more now, okay? These numbers are a couple years old, but about 55 million abortions have been completed by Planned Parenthood, okay, since they started. It's a very, very, very large number, okay? Very large number. 55 million people that would have been alive are not alive because of Planned Parenthood. Is the adoption system any good? Hell fucking no, not in America. Excuse my language, but it's absolutely terrible. Is foster care good? Absolutely not, especially not in New York State. Okay, do they need to be improved? Absolutely. Will I work hard if I'm elected to the 137th Assembly District to make sure that that is improved and that we work and focus heavily on improving foster care and adoption and updating the proceedings and procedures to make sure that it's better for the children as well as the people that are working to adopt and foster these children? Yes, 100%, because I want to see those programs actually be successful, and I want to see more adoptions happen and go through in a positive manner. But that's aside. Let's talk about that number, 55 million, okay? We have a catastrophic level Social Security and Medicare issue right now. We have so few people that have been born in our nation that we can no longer support the tiered system that supports Social Security. Here's how Social Security and Medicare work. Okay, or is it Medicaid? I always confuse those two, but you guys know what I'm talking about. I think it's Medicare. So, on the top is the old people. On the bottom is the young people. Okay, so on the bottom, as you can see by my example with my hands, on the bottom, it's much bigger than on the top. Okay? So the top of the pyramid is up here. That's all the old people. On the bottom is supposed to be all the young people. Okay? But what's happened is because there are fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer and less young people being born, there are more old people, so that now the number of old people is exceeding the number of young people that are working and paying into the systems in order to actually fully fund these systems. There was an article a couple of days ago which said that the federal government is considering cutting all benefits from Social Security and Medicare for my generation. Bruh, I worked hard to pay into Social Security and stuff. I want all of my money back. All of my money. Okay? And people are like, oh, well, Marcus, But the old people, oh well, old Marcus, right? When I get old, there's not going to be any money for me and any money for all of the other people in my generations and the generations after mine that are working hard right now, every day, and are paying into the system. So the federal government is going to leave us behind because what? They killed off all of these people? Okay? Because they killed off all of these people who could have ended up being paying into the system because they would be working. We would have a higher level economy, okay? More buzzing and everything, which this also goes into our serious issues with employment right now, right? Okay? Employment is a serious issue. There are so many jobs open, right? Okay? There are so many jobs open. A lot of those jobs people don't have the skills for. Why don't they have the skills? Because they don't have the education. Well, what's the issue with the education? There aren't enough teachers. Well, why aren't there enough teachers? Because there's not actually enough people going into those fields. Well, why aren't there enough people going into those fields? Because there's not enough people, period. Okay? Everything works in percentages and tiers, okay? So the more people we have, the more likelihood that they're going to go be teachers. Especially if they have a good experience in the educational system, which is empowering, improving, and makes them feel like they're really supported. But that's not what we have in the American educational system, which is a whole different subject for a whole different video. But that right there is the serious issue. We just physically don't have enough people. And Medicare and Social Security are collapsing. Well, they're collapsed already. When Obama was in office, Obama's administration started to dip into the Social Security Trust. Well, Marcus, what's the Social Security Trust? And why are you talking about Obama? Not talking about Obama, just talking about a period in time. He just so happened to be the president when this happened. So they started dipping in the Social Security Trust. The Social Security Trust is basically, think of it like a mutual fund or a stock portfolio where all of the money goes in and then that money gets invested. Okay? And they're starting to pull from the trust. So that means that the more money you take out of the trust, the less money there is to get return on your money from. Now, this happened under Obama. We're almost, when that happened, matter of fact, that happened his first term. And that was the first time it ever happened in the history of our nation. So that's 12 years ago almost now? Okay? We're what? Do some quick math. We're about, probably about 12 years. Probably about 12 years ago this started. So less and less and less and less and less. Plus, we know that we just had this serious issue with people just not working because the largest two states in our nation decided that they're going to crush their own economies under the guise of health and wellness, even though the states that didn't do that had roughly, and this is roughly because it's not actually right, because realistically the states that didn't shut down have way lower numbers per capita, but that's a whole nother conversation, but had roughly the same death numbers. So this is very, 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 very important part of the conversation. Our economy is being crushed for various reasons, and the less people that we have working, okay, that wasn't a hit on people's COVID policy. That was just a fact. Again, I'm just spitting facts here today, okay? I'm not spitting my personal opinion. These are facts. You can look them up, okay? So the fact that we have less people working means we have less people paying into the system. If there are less people paying into the system collapses because all it is a giant pyramid scheme. Oh, Marcus, it's not a pyramid scheme. Why isn't it? Social Security is legitimately called the Social Security scheme. We just in America associate the word scheme with being negative and as if somebody is doing something that is misleading. But in other countries, scheme is a normal common word that they attach to what a program is. Okay, that's just an Americanization of the thought process of the word. Okay, it's kind of like how conspiracy is an actual crime, but if somebody says that something is a conspiracy, it kind of is like, oh, well, that person is a conspiracy theorist. They don't know what they're talking about, even though conspiracy is an actual crime on both federal and state level. So, back at it. So the pyramid is collapsing under the weight of all the old people. And why? Because there aren't enough young people. Well, what happened to all the young people? Less births. Okay, that's number one. less births. We also have less people that were born historically, because if you go back, and again, like I said, tens of millions of people have been killed by abortion since they started Planned Parenthood. Okay, over 55 million people. Okay, that's a lot of people that could have been in the workforce, that could have had more kids to help impact and hold up Social Security and Medicaid. But we don't have those numbers. Okay, we don't have those numbers. We don't, because they were relegated to death, and that was bad. Now they're just a footnote in our past that we're not able to reaccrue. So now they're saying that we're having population collapse in the United States. This is a real thing. Look it up. And across the world also, they're saying that the human race might actually go extinct because we're having so few live births. We're not talking about that, though. We're not going to talk about it. But let's go back to the system and the need for manpower. Okay, we call it the economic system. Our economic system is in sore straits right now because we don't have enough people to work. But we don't have enough people to work because we just don't have enough physical people. Well, Marcus, a lot of people are choosing not to work. This is true. However, had we had more people, that would not be as much of an issue because there would be more people that would be able to work. It's just, there's a lot going on with this whole thing in abortion when conversations that are not talked about. So why isn't it talked about the impact on our, well, supply chain, right? We have supply chain issues because we don't have enough people working. Why don't we have enough people working? We don't have enough people. It's not that we just started with a supply chain issue. This supply chain issue has been coming for years. Why has it been coming for years? Because the people that were doing those type of jobs have been getting older and older and older, and younger people have not been taking those jobs because younger people have been taking other jobs. But if we have more people, there would be more people in those jobs. I mean, these are the type of things that you're not able to make up, that nobody really wants to talk about when it comes to abortion or anything like that. So these are things that I really think that we need to look at, okay? We really, really need to look at these things. We need to discuss these things, and it's very, very important. You know, this lady asked me the other day, she said, well, I'm a voter, and this is an important issue to me, and it's a yes or a no whether you support abortion or not. Is it a yes or a no? Because what I support is adoption. I support foster care. I have friends who are foster caregivers presently. I have friends who have adopted children. It's my honest dream to have 8 children of my own, at least, and then adopt 30 more children, okay? So that I can give them a home too. Because I want to be able to help and develop as many children as I can, because that's very important to me because of, well, the life that I've had and things like that. But that's not really a yes or a no issue. And it should always be started with a conversation about contraception, okay? We've got all types of contraception, and nobody's talking about contraception, okay? Nobody's talking about condoms. Nobody's talking about birth control, birth pills, Depo, whatever. They got the ones that you put in there and all types of other stuff. But they've also got female condoms. They've got this, they've got that. They've got all types of different things, okay? And we don't talk about those at all. We immediately jump to the abortion conversation. Well, what happened to family planning? Right? That's my question. What happened to family planning? I don't know what happened to family planning. We don't have many families that are together now, and I talked a little bit about why that is. But it just doesn't exist. And you know what also doesn't really exist anymore? Coupling. Okay? Marcus, what do you mean coupling? I mean actual long-term relationships. Okay? In which you grow and develop attachments and stuff to people, and you know, you decide to live your life together, stuff like that. We don't have those things. Okay? You know what else is up? Divorce is crazy. You know, there's an interesting thing that people used to, and this isn't, we're not talking very long ago, we're talking about 50 years ago maybe. What year are we in now? Yeah, we're talking about maybe 50, 60 years ago. People used to get married when they were 13 and 14. Okay? And people nowadays are like, oh, well, that's terrible, that's horrible. And I say, well, it was a different time period. But the one thing that we do need to focus on is the fact that at that point, those people had responsibilities and duties. And they knew what their responsibilities and duties and families and stuff like that were about. Most of our great grandparents had like 12, 13 kids. Okay? You got, or 8 or whatever. But they had a lot. Okay? Depending on your grandparents, you probably had a ton. Okay? But now our families are getting smaller and smaller. The numbers are dwindling. Okay? And a large portion of that is expenses. Expenses have continued to grow up and up and up and up. But the government wants us not to be together and not to couple because, you know, strong, independent woman, I can do it myself. And now the government wants to raise your kids for you. The government wants to raise the kids for you. It's insane. Joe Biden, our president currently, said the other day on World TV, right? World TV. He said this on World TV. He said the children spend more time with the teachers than the parents, and they're not really the parents' children. They're the schools and the government's children. Come again? This is our president. This is the president of my nation, the United States of America, right here. Okay? He said that out of his mouth. Maybe you guys, maybe we're having the wrong conversation. Maybe we need to have more of a conversation about coupling, keeping families together, how to develop and foster healthy relationships, both emotionally and sexually. And we need to talk more about contraception, okay, and family planning, because you really need to plan for a family and how you're going to be able to provide for a family now. We need to do everything that we can to get our birth rate up, but we need to do everything that we can to make sure that we're fostering wholesome homes and families so that those children will have the ability to develop and grow in a positive way, and it'll positively impact all of our society. So if you're for abortion, or if you're not for abortion, if you're pro-life, or if you're pro-choice, or whatever you are, these are considerations and things that I think are very important and need to be discussed and talked about, because it's just not happening. And it's something that's very important. And I'm going to leave off with this. I was kind of thinking of maybe not putting this part in there, but yesterday our president said something extremely alarming. Okay, based on the decision that, well, the position paper, I guess you would say, it wasn't actually the end result, right? So, based on the draft that came out of the leaked information from the Supreme Court that said that abortion didn't have any constitutional basis, the President of the United States said, well, we're not able to allow them to overturn this. First of all, that's a problem. The president has no business saying anything like that. It's not about your personal feelings, how you feel as an individual. Hear me out. There is separation of the 3 branches of government, okay? So you've got the executive, the legislative, and the judicial, okay? The whole concept of why we have the separation of the 3 branches of government is specifically so we don't have those overzealous use of government overreach. The Supreme Court is there to uphold our Constitution, to make sure that our Constitution, they have one job. Their job is to make sure that all laws are legal based on the Constitution, okay? Anything outside of that goes down to states' rights, Okay, states' rights. That's why we are the United States of America. A very important concept that is not addressed is that what a state is. A state is its own country. Okay, that's why we are the United States. This is, we as a whole, America, is a country, but each state, like New York right here, is its own entity as well. Okay, that's what we have to understand. That's why there can be different laws on the federal level than there are laws on the state level. Okay, so when the president said that if this law is, if they proceed with this, basically the draft, and they go along these lines and they overturn Roe versus Wade, a lot of other laws will be overturned too. And we can't allow that. Our president said, hear me out on this is just the analysis of exactly what happened in facts. If the Supreme Court, whose job it is to decide if a law has a constitutional basis or not, otherwise it goes back to the states, has a constitutional basis or not, deems that a position or a law has nothing to do with the Constitution and has no constitutional basis, then that means that it gets wiped out. In this case, it wasn't even a law, it was a decision. Okay, and a decision is not a law, which is a whole nother conversation for another video. But the president said that that decision would open up room for many other laws to be done away with. Now, I need you to think about that. Just sit with that for a second. What does that mean? It means that those other laws would be unconstitutional as well. So the president is concerned that if the Supreme Court finds this law unconstitutional, or rather, let me not say unconstitutional, does not have a constitutional basis, that other cases will then go through the Supreme Court and they will be found not to have a constitutional basis. Well, this is the Supreme Court's job. But what's more concerning is the way that Biden said it. He said that means that we're going to have other laws that are going to be overturned. But that means that those laws are already unconstitutional. Thank you for listening, and please consider everything that we talked about today. Take it back to your friends and family and consider everything all together. You guys, remember, states' rights are extremely important. Stop giving the federal government more power than they should have. Please, this is the time when we need to make sure that we're reining in the powers of the federal government. Okay, lately the state government, especially New York State, which I live in, has been acting up way too much and doing many unconstitutional things. But what the federal government is doing is on a whole nother level of unconstitutionalness, and we need to be paying attention as citizens to what the government is doing, because we're not able to let the government continue this governmental overreach and just lead us about willy-nilly and do whatever they want with us, because it won't stop here. Okay, our rights won't stop being infringed if we continue to let the government do whatever they want. As you heard from Joe Biden out of his mouth himself, he is concerned that many of the laws that exist today on the federal level are unconstitutional, and he is concerned that they could possibly be overturned by the Supreme Court, and that gives him a reason to fear. And if that gives him a reason to fear, it should give you a reason to think about that. Because if a law is unconstitutional, or rather doesn't have a constitutional basis, remember those are two separate things. If a law doesn't have a constitutional basis, or is unconstitutional in some cases, then should it be a law? And it definitely shouldn't be a federal law. And should the president be saying we should have unconstitutional laws, or laws that don't have a basis in the Constitution on the federal level? Absolutely not. That's called government overreach, my friends. You guys be blessed, be well. I'll catch you later.